Okay, thank you for joining us today. A couple things I want to bring to your attention real quick, and that is we do encourage you to type in questions that may come up over the course of the presentation. We'll be covering those at the end. There is a handout section with 4 PDF handouts that you can download at your convenience during the presentation if you'd like, obviously related to the subject matter. So let's go ahead and get started. Our subject today is the updated XLE and XLT products. These products have been serving Horner well and their customers for many, many years, selling in great numbers, and we thought it was important to update the product to give it a continued long life. So we're going to cover that update today in some detail. We're going to talk about what is an updated XLE or XLT, what was updated, very importantly, how does it impact existing customers? Because with existing OEMs, as you all know, they hate disruptions, so we want to make sure this goes as smoothly as possible for them. We're going to talk about a new embedded Ethernet model that offers more capabilities than this product line has seen in the past from an Ethernet communication standpoint. And we're going to talk about a couple of example applications for these products in which really they excel better than any other Horner product in the product line, which is something that some people may be surprised by, because I know a lot of people think of these as being products that aren't as modern as some of the newer models in the family. So this is what we plan on covering today. Let's start by discussing where the XLE and XLT fit in the Horner product lineup. And what I'm showing there in that diagram to the left, that's really the low end of the Horner product line. And for many years, starting in 2006 and then later in 2007, the XLE and XLT have been the entry-level point for the OCS product line, and that continues today. As most of you know, however, for the past couple of years, we've been working very hard on a couple new entry-level products, the X2, slated for release by the end of the year, and the X4, which will hit in the first quarter of next year, and those products will become our new entry-level. But they're not becoming the new entry-level by replacing the XLE and XLT. They will be at a lower price point, and they will augment this low-end product category from Horner. In addition to, of course, the X5 product, which has been around for a little over a year now and is selling very well, and the XL4, which is definitely one of our most popular products and really carries the flag of the quartered-in controller in general as being the most powerful unit available from any manufacturer anywhere in that size. So again, the XLE and XLT have been the entry-level point for our product line. They will continue to be an important part of the low-end product line, and we'll have lower-cost products available when the X2 and the X4 hit. All right, now let's talk about the updated XLE and XLT. And really, it was because of their continued popularity and some of their unique capabilities of the XLE and the XLT that we've decided to undergo a major update of this product. And this update includes a drop-in replacement that, again, is designed to allow existing OEMs to continue to use these products without disruption. The update also includes, as I mentioned before, newly available models that include embedded Ethernet. And again, these updates will keep these products viable for many years to come. How do we identify the updated XLE and XLT? Well, as you can imagine, it was important to not disrupt existing OEMs, and as part of that plan, we did not change the part number for the drop-in replacement versions of the XLE and the XLT. Those part numbers remain the same. It is only by examining the hardware revision of the part number, and actually it's after the part number, the hardware revision, T or later, will specify a drop-in replacement. Revisions A through S in that hardware revision slot will refer to the original design. So that's on the drop-in replacement models. For the new embedded Ethernet models, those have not been available before, so those have a new but similar part numbering scheme where we simply replaced the 0 immediately preceding the I/O model identifier. We changed that 0 to an E for the Ethernet capable models. So again, the original HE-XE102. If it's ordered as an Ethernet version, will be an HE-XE1E2. So that's how you identify both the drop-in replacement and how you specify and order an embedded Ethernet version. Okay, let's talk about what's been improved. Well, one of the things that's been updated was the microprocessor, as you can imagine, on the internals of the XLE and the XLT. We've picked a faster microprocessor, one with a good history in front of it, or good future in front of it, I should say, that would allow for many more years of service of the product. So any application that's using at least 2% of the total program memory available in the XLE or the XLT will see a significant increase in performance when regards to the logic scan and the screen updates. Those applications that are very large, that use a larger portion even of the available program memory, will see a significant increase in performance. So that'll be very welcome to those users who are the power users for these products. Now, those applications that use less than 2% of total program memory really will not see a speed increase, but those applications were running very, very well already using the existing microprocessor. So something to be aware of. As long as you're using greater than 2% of the available space, you will definitely see a speed increase. Now, what else have we changed? Well, we've upped the capacity for the micro SD slot. Now, what many of you may not be aware of is that in 2006, when we released the XLE, it was the very first industrial product available anywhere that utilized micro SD memory. And the reason we chose that form factor was because we learned that the cell phone manufacturers were designing micro SD into their handsets back in those days. So we thought that sounds like a form factor that's got a future. So we followed that same path. As a matter of fact, micro SD wasn't even called micro SD back then. It was called transflash. And the most popular size, here we go guys, 128 megabytes. That's megabytes. And we could only imagine that someday we'd have a need for a 2 gigabyte card in that same size. It wasn't even imaginable back then. Well, it only took a few years, and sure enough, it was difficult to even find a card as small as 2 gigabytes. So we updated the firmware of the original unit so they could use larger cards, but they could never use more than 2 gigabytes of those larger cards. Now, with the updated XLE and XLT, we can support micro SD cards all the way up to 32 gigabytes, and you can access the entire card. So that capacity is definitely one of the improvements that were made. And keep in mind, we do have a plan for sizes larger than 32 gigabytes with the new updated hardware, but that's just a plan at this point. Today, the limit is 32 gigabytes. What else has changed besides microprocessor speed and micro SD capacity? Well, the models 2, 3, and 4 utilize the analog to digital converter built into the microprocessor for their analog inputs. So those 3 models will see an increase in resolution of analog inputs from 10-bit, which is 1 part in 1,000, to 12-bit, which is 1 part in 4,000. So that's a 4x increase in resolution. Now, that sounds like it could be trouble for the program. Is it going to affect the programming of the units, and will it force OEMs to go in and change their scaling logic? Well, the answer to that is no, because from the beginning, the analog inputs have been scaled from 0 for a minimum signal to 32,000 for a maximum signal. In the case of the original units, the minimum increment you would see in that analog input register was 32 counts. With the newer units, they're still scaled from 0 to 32,000. That has not changed, but now you will see increment changes as small as 8 counts. So you've got more granularity, less missing codes, and there's no programming changes required at all. So that increase in resolution comes really free of charge. Also a note, the reason that the Models 5 and the Model 6 are not seeing an increase in resolution is because those products already had their own dedicated microprocessor that was already high resolution. So those did not change. The other thing that has changed significantly for the better is the high-speed counter speed capability. So the original XLE and XLT were limited to a total of 10 kilohertz from a frequency standpoint. And that meant if you're using, let's say you had a quadrature application using an A quad B signal, you really were limited to 2500 hertz because, again, you're counting multiple edges there with a quadrature signal. So again, the limit of the original was 10 kilohertz. With the new updated units, you've got 50 times that frequency, or a full 500 kilohertz. That's the same rating that you'll see in an XL4, which was best in class. And really, in the price range of the XLE and XLT, best in class is about 100K or maybe 200K. So now we've raised the bar there with these products all the way up to 500K. And these also, or this increase in resolution, I'm sorry, this increase in frequency does not impact the logic program either. So again, another change that will not impact the program for existing OEMs. What else did we add? Well, let's talk about a new USB port for programming purposes. So it's a mini B type port located right in between the MJ1 and MJ2 ports that have always been on the product, that now is available for programming purposes. So you can still use the programming tools, the programming kit that has long existed that plugs into MJ1 or MJ2, that's still supported. However, if you want to use USB, you can plug a mini B cable directly into the USB port on the side of the unit. Now, this is important to note. For firmware updates, just like the original units, the updated units must use the MJ1 port for firmware updates. So they do not update via micro SD. They update via a serial port on MJ1 as before. So those customers will continue to use their programming kits that include a USB to serial adapter along with a cable adapter that plugs into MJ1. So that must continue to be used for firmware updates. Let's talk about a couple of limitations with the new updated units, because there are a couple that are very important to note. First, with this new hardware, you must use Seascape 9.8 or later. Okay, you cannot use an earlier version of Seascape. Also, you must use firmware versions 15 or later. This unit, or these updated units, do not support firmware versions prior to 15. So if you have a customer who's locked into a previous version of firmware with the XLE or XLT, they will not be able to downgrade these newer updated units to that older version of firmware, so they will need to test qualify the new version. So again, those two main limitations are you must use Seascape 9.8 or later, and you must use version 15 or later of firmware. Let's talk about the mechanics of migrating to the updated XLE and XLT from a programming standpoint. Let's start with the customers that always update their units by downloading from Seascape. So this process is effectively the same as before, with really no changes. They start by backing up their existing file, which is always a good practice and always recommended. They open the file in Seascape 9.8 or later, establish a connection with the OCS through the normal means, whether that's through the MJ1 port or more now maybe with USB, but they establish a connection. Once they've established that connection, they're able to download the program as before. Seascape automatically detects whether the hardware connected over that serial connection or USB connection is the newer updated hardware or not, and if it is or isn't, it automatically adapts. So therefore, there's nothing the user has to do to specify the version of hardware. Seascape just detects that automatically. So again, for a customer who typically uses a Seascape file to download to the unit, there is absolutely no change for them. Now, for those customers who use a binary PGM file and update the unit directly from the unit itself through the memory card slot, there is an extra step that is required. Again, they should start by backing up their file. In this case, it's a PGM file. Open Seascape 9.8, and then they will find in the Tools menu a new option that was not available with previous versions of Seascape, and that is the XLE/T PGM Updater utility. And that utility allows them to browse to their existing PGM file and then specify the name for a new destination file that they will use to load into their newer updated units. Once they've completed that conversion process within Seascape 9.8, they take the new converted PGM file, copy it onto microSD, load that into the XLE or XLT, and load the PGM file as before from the system menu. So that effectively is the process required for the updated XLE and XLT if you're using the binary PGM file. There's that one extra step to do the conversion to load it into an updated unit. Now let's move on to discussing the new embedded Ethernet models. And these models have increased capability that have not been seen in the XLE and XLT since the beginning of their life. Let's first start by talking about the original support for Ethernet with revisions A through S. So again, this is from the original units that have been shipping since 2006. They did have Ethernet capability if you add a COM option card, and that was a field installable kit. The part number is HE-XEC, and that added limited functionality to the existing units. It added the capability for the units to be a Modbus TCP slave, and it added the capability of Seascape programming to the original units. But that was it, very limited functionality. But we still sold a lot of those COM option kits. Now the new embedded Ethernet models of the XLE and XLT will support similar Ethernet functionality as the X5 and the XL4. And those two products are absolutely best in class from a communication standpoint and certainly from an Ethernet communication standpoint. So what that means is that the XLE and XLT will now be best in their class as well, for sure. Let's talk about the protocols that are supported in the new XLE and XLT. One of the great things about the way that Horner has always supported embedded Ethernet is the fact that we've always supported multiple simultaneous connections. So with many of our competitors, you can pick one or two Ethernet-based functions to use at any given time. With our products, we support many multiple simultaneous connections, so you can do a lot of these things simultaneously and just have a lot more functionality in your unit. So let's take a look at some of the protocols that we support. We support Modbus TCP as a master, Modbus TCP as a slave. We support Ethernet IP tag exchange, which means you can be exchanging live tag data with global tags from a Logix processor. We can be an Ethernet IP I/O device, which means we can be seen as a high-capacity Ethernet I/O device exchanging up to 128 words in and 128 words out of I/O data with an Ethernet IP scanner. We support Ethernet Global Data Protocol, which is a tremendous UDP-based protocol for exchanging data between controllers. You can literally exchange hundreds of words of data every few milliseconds if you need to. Very efficient protocol. And then we support a lot of the legacy protocols like GESRTP, ASCII over Ethernet, which is valuable, say, for a barcode reader that utilizes Ethernet, for instance, and those sorts of things. But we also support email as well as FTP. So, of course, with email, you can send emails on demand, whether it's because of an alarm condition or maybe you want to deliver a file attachment, maybe a data log file, for instance. FTP is a great way to access the micro SD card to retrieve files, copy files, delete files, all that over the Ethernet connection. So those are all supported by the updated the updated Ethernet versions of the XLE and the XLT. Let's talk about a couple of protocols that are not yet supported but will be. The most important of which probably is WebMI. So yes, the new XLE and XLT with embedded Ethernet will support WebMI, but not yet. And don't forget, WebMI does not restrict you to the resolution of the screen in the designing of your web pages. So yes, you'll be able to design full page, full size, say 1920 by 1080 web pages with full color, designed with using all the graphics tools from Seascape, and you'll be able to serve up those files from an XLE or XLT, and that capability will be available in early 2018. Another protocol that is now available in our other units, which is not yet available in these products, is network time protocol. So that is a protocol that allows you to set the clock based on an Ethernet-based time server, which could be at the local facility on the local LAN, or it could even be accessed over the internet. And then lastly, I want to cover a protocol that we do not plan on supporting in the XLE and XLT, and that is BACnet IP. BACnet IP is a popular building automation and control network that is definitely gaining popularity, and we support it very well and will continue to do so in the X5 and in the XL series, including the XL4. But at this time, we don't plan on supporting BACnet IP in the XLE and the XLT. So we wanted to make sure you understood that. Now let's talk about the approvals. And again, we did not want to disrupt existing OEMs, so we made sure that all the approvals that were previously available with the XLE and XLT will be fully available with the new updated version, as well as the embedded Ethernet versions. So that includes CE, it includes ABS for shipboard applications, it includes, of course, NEMA 4X, which is a standard for washdown and corrosion resistance. These products carry the full UL Class 1 Div 2 hazardous location rating that they've always carried, as well as the UL type rating for environment, including type 1, 3R, 4, 4X, 12, 12K, and 13. So again, all those ratings are on the product without disruption. Let's talk about a couple example applications now for the XLE and the XLT, really ones that they do better than any other product in our product line, which many of you may not have thought of. Let's start with the XLT, and a great application for the XLT is as a remote RTU, especially in those applications that are outdoors and applications that may be battery powered or solar powered. There's a lot of capabilities in the XLT that really lend itself to this application. First of all, let's talk about the outdoor aspect of things. The XLT utilizes what's called a transflective display. And yes, it's monochrome. However, unlike the color screens on our phones or on XL4s or some of our competitors, those color screens sometimes struggle in the outdoor environment, and they can get washed out by bright ambient light conditions. In the case of transflective displays like you'll find on the XLT, that extra bright ambient light actually enhances the viewability of the screen. It doesn't detract from it. So that's a key capability in the XLT for outdoor applications. Also, the XLT is available with a built-in heater and a -40 C temperature rating, which again, for an outdoor application can be very important, especially in the north. A key capability of the XLT is its low power usage. So, for instance, compared to the XL4 is the same size, has a color screen, does a lot of things really well, is one of our more popular products, but the XL4 uses significantly more power than the XLT does. And again, if you're talking a battery-powered or solar-powered application, the extra power that you need from other controllers is a negative. So in the XLT, it's definitely a positive that it is very miserly with the power requirements. And the XLT has strong communications capabilities, whether that be cellular, radio modem, or now wired Ethernet. Those are all capabilities the XLT does very well. And then let's not forget about the built-in memory slot. What that means, for instance, is data logging. Maybe the application is a regulatory one. Maybe we're controlling an application that is subject to government regulation, and we need to record the fact that this process was in control, log what we did, when we did it, so that we can back up the fact that we're meeting all the government regulations. Let's also talk about store and forward. In a typical application, if we don't have local storage capabilities, when we're reporting critical data to a server or to the cloud remotely, if communications goes down, that key data could be lost. Because we have local storage capability in the form of microSD, that data is logged locally and then reported after communications is restored. So there's no loss of data. So that store and forward capability is also very key in this application. So you can see all those factors make the XLT really ideally suited for an outdoor RTU application, especially one that's solar powered. So definitely something I wanted to bring to your attention there. Now let's talk about an application that is great for the XLE that you may not have thought of, and that is the XLE as an Ethernet or maybe even a CAN I/O block. The XLE offers a great mix of I/O at a cost-effective price, and now with the 4 legitimately high-speed counters and the 4 higher resolution analog inputs, that 22 I/O mix or 40 I/O mix, depending on model, is a great value at that price. And now with the Ethernet capability that's been added, we can provide fast updates over Ethernet using a variety of different protocols. So that could be, if you're interfacing with another OCS, it could be using EGD protocol, reporting that data every few milliseconds back to the OCS. You could use CSCAN protocol, of course, to get that data back there over CAN. If you're talking about a third-party device, you can be reporting that data back using Modbus TCP or Ethernet IP or even CAN Open for that matter. So great capability of the XLE as a remote I/O block. You can mount it on DIN rail. And let's compare it with an XL4, for instance, which again is a fantastic product, but you effectively have the same I/O specifications that you would have in an XL4 at half the price. So when you're using that as a remote I/O block, that's obviously a big deal. And then finally, let's mention the fact that you have a small screen with complete flexibility to display I/O status. So you're not limited to some blinking LEDs that tell you whether the digital inputs are on or off. You can not only enunciate the status of digital inputs, but also the current values of analog, current high-speed counter values, all those sort of things. So when it comes to debugging a system where the XLE is a remote I/O block, you've got a lot more capability on the screen and to aid in that debugging process. So again, an application that the XLE is best suited of any product probably in the entire Horner portfolio as a really effective remote I/O block. And we didn't even talk about some of the protocol conversion you could be doing using Modbus protocol and other serial protocols as well. All right, now let's talk about commercial information. All right, starting with pricing and availability. Let's start with the XLE. There is no price change to the drop-in XLE and a $75 adder for the Ethernet version of the XLE. And the drop-in replacement will be available either in November or December, depending on when previous versions of the hardware have been used up. And the Ethernet version will be available next month. Moving on to the XLT, again, no price increase whatsoever for the drop-in replacement and a $75 adder for the Ethernet version, and those both will be available next month. And we do encourage your existing OEMs to order an updated unit, revision T or later, to kick the tires and validate the operation. It's always best to check and make sure that there aren't any unexpected changes or any unexpected changes in operation, if you will, with the new hardware. We've worked very, very hard to make it a smooth transition and to extend the life of these products for many, many years to the future. But again, it's a smart move for that OEM to get an updated unit in their hands and start checking it out before things get critical. Okay, let's talk about an updated XLE and XLT launch package. First of all, the general market launch will be next week. So that's when you'll start to see information on our website, on our main homepage, talking about the new updated XLE and XLT. So at hornerautomation.com, that information will be posted next week. The webinar materials will be available on the channel portal Friday. That's Friday, October 20th. So the sales sheets, the manuals, the data sheets, those will all be available Friday, October 20th. Again, go to the hornerautomation.com website, log in, and as a channel partner, you'll have access to the channel portal, and on the channel portal, those data sheets will be available starting on Friday, October the 20th. And then also, the first week of November, you will also have the updated price list for all of our products, including the updated XLE and XLT. So that's the November 2017 price list. that will be launched and available on the channel portal section of our website the first week of November. And as a little bit of a preview, I've heard through the grapevine that there's also going to be some pricing changes of a couple models in the OCS product line, and those pricing changes are going to be a little bit lower. So we're going to make some pricing adjustments based on some market feedback, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so that concludes this webinar, at least in terms of my presentation material. Let me take a look and see if we have any questions that have popped up. I don't see anything at this stage, so I guess I will state that if you do think of any questions after this webinar, please feel free to send me an email, and I will try and respond to it in a timely fashion. Again, this is Chuck Ridgway, and my email address is chuck.ridgway, R-I-D-G-E-W-A-Y, @heapg.com. I did get a question that popped up here that I'll cover right now, and that is, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Okay. And will the webinar be online? Two excellent questions. Okay, I have the answers here. We are going to post the webinar online tomorrow afternoon. I'm sorry, Friday, October 20th in the afternoon. It will be posted, and it'll be up there for at least a week. So if you have colleagues who couldn't see the webinar through one of the normal times, they'll be able to view it Friday, October 20th in the afternoon and all the following week. And then the PowerPoint presentation will be posted next week. Again, all this information will be on the channel portal. Okay, I think that covers all the questions. Let me just verify here real quick. It does indeed. So thank you very much, and I hope you got a lot out of the webinar, and we appreciate your time.